It's another CBBC video. This time it's not going to be a top 10 list, it's just going to be me saying which shows that I enjoyed, and I don't think that many people actually talk about them, so just examples of shows which I feel are forgotten, and in no particular order. One of them is The Secret Show, which was kind of like a cartoon about these kind of secret agents, but it was quite a funny show as well, with lots of very funny characters. I actually know the guy, well, I know the son of the guy who created it, so yeah, I've got close connection to it. It was also just a very sort of light-hearted, funny show. It's kind of a cross between like action, mystery, and comedy. So I think it's a good combination and makes for a really good cartoon with like brilliant characters like, Anita, Victor, Professor, Doctor, and the guy who changes his name daily, and had a very cool theme tune as well. I also quite like the beginning, the funny bit where there was the Fluffy Bunny show. I mean, they just like wreck the set to make way for the secret show, and if you look carefully in every episode, there you can see a rabbit somewhere. Another one is Gastronauts, which was basically just a show about food, but they had like different themes every episode, like how to cook without an oven, how to cook in the wild, how they cooked it in like the olden days, how to make food in different ways, like what weird combinations of food can you have. It was always something slightly different. I just always found it really interesting what they would do each time. A very likable host, Stephen Gates, who I've actually seen live. This show is just, I mean, it's not the most memorable ever, but it's fairly enjoyable. But I think the main reason I like it, series one was probably the best. Like with many of the shows in this list, they kind of ran out of ideas after that because they just did some of the craziest, like impressive stuff in the first series. Another one is Richard Hammond's Blast Lab. Again, I kind of prefer the first series to the later ones. I just quite like the sort of the game show format of it. First of all, it's just like a quiz. Then there's like some practical game, and then you've got to figure out like the outcome of some like massive scale experiment done by the so-called lab rats. I just felt it was each section of the show was pretty funny, and it made science really interesting. And the messy mess test at the end was like the main thing. I feel like maybe the other games weren't important enough because they didn't really. You only got like a 5-second advantage in the final game. But I quite like the sort of references, and they even had like a Top Gear reference when they had Richard's car Oliver. I think the best thing of the show was probably the theme tune. It had, genuinely the best theme tune of like any CBBC show. I mentioned this one in my top 10 best CBBC shows in honorable mentions. Little Howard's Big Question. Again, I really like the first series. There are a few good ones in the later ones, but it's all about the first series. There are some, really interesting episodes with these they are such a comedic duo, and again a connection. I've seen Howard Reed twice, and I didn't actually realise he actually does the voice for Little Howard. There's just so many like brilliant songs from like the I've Got to Go to Sleep to the sort of Falling is Natural, the Most Dangerous Food, the love song, one about the aliens. I think it just really captures the mind of like children, of like questions that they ask their parents that parents don't actually know the answer to, and it just shows it really well. It answers the questions really well in a really funny and interesting way. And another one I already mentioned, Hotel Trouble, and yet again, the first series is the only good one. I mean, after that, but this one is much more so than the others, because after series one, they add like loads of new characters, and it all just goes to shit after that. But the first series, they have such good characters, and I think it's loosely based off of Fawlty Towers, which is a show I do really like. But this one, there's all the characters. You got Sally, who's kind of like the kind of annoying one, and then there's Jamie, who's yeah. I mean, back when I first watched it as a child, I liked him, but now looking back as an adult, Jamie was actually a massive dickhead. But who really steals the show is Lenny. He's one of the funniest characters. He kind of reminds me of Father Dougal from Father Ted. And Mrs. Poshington and her cat, General Sirius Poshington, were also a very iconic character from the show. Just very sort of good stories, and it just shows how sort of passionate they are about the hotel. It's really quite heartwarming. Now, Scoop. Now, most people wouldn't really consider this show to be like a forgotten one, but for some reason, when I was making my top 10 best CBBC shows, my mind just completely forgot about it for some reason. I reckon it would have been the top 5 if it had. But I feel this show had a good cast, Sean Williamson and Mark Benton, and this was the origin of Hacker T Dog. But for this one, I don't actually think one series is better than any of the others. I like all the series throughout the whole show. I think maybe the late ones are slightly better than the first one, but the first one had the legendary character of Sid the Source, who doesn't appear in later episodes. I just feel it's just such a funny show about the bumbling reporter who gets into all kinds of scrapes. In the end, his editor always shouts, "Digby Digworth!" But there were two kind of things I didn't. Well, no, one thing really I didn't really like about the show was the whole kind of hacker song that sometimes occurred, which was just really, really cringy and annoying. Apart from that, amazingly funny show, lovable characters, and honestly, some of the episodes of it I could watch like 100 times and still find them just as hilarious. Relic Guardians of the Museum. This only was able to get one series, which was a shame, but I can see why. It was quite hard to create. Well, the format was there were like 3 games, which I think a lot of them were kind of a little bit too luck based. But they were pretty exciting games, quite similar format to the games on Trapped. The whole if you pass, you all see the vision. If you fail, only one of you gets to see the vision, and then the final battle against the Dark Lord, which was pretty intense. It kind of made you quite interested in history, but to be honest, it's just like the fun and games were kind of what I really watched it for. Then there's Fifa Fo Young, which, again, like Richard Hammond's Blast Lab, is like a game show, but I feel the last game, The Great Escape, is like far too important, and the other games kind of get cast aside. Although for Richard Hammond's Blast Lab, it's only 5 seconds maximum. For this one, it's like a maximum of, I think it's 25 seconds if you win. But there's lots of hardly anyone talks about this show, but I think it's really, really good. Like the chemistry between Les and Brian is brilliant. The games are quite imaginative, and they really sort of bring life to the show. And I think the adverts are just brilliant. They're quite disgusting, but they're just really funny and interesting to watch. And I love how they even have quizzes about the adverts. I just like the games. I think the visuals are what really makes this show brilliant. There's like giant food and stuff that these humunchies like work with to win, and there's so many iconic lines like the team who's not the winner will be Brian's dinner. Now Big Babies, which again they only made one series of this show, and it wasn't like an amazing show. Generally, it's like 2 grown men's faces on babies, which was a little bit creepy, admittedly. But I think all the toys in the background had quite good chemistry, and there was and the baby that kind of just shows off. I think the Gonch is his name. Butch is like the main toy in the show. But I think the real reason why I like the show was, forget about most of the episodes were decent, but the series finale, wow, that was just top notch. When Brooks has a dream about like how everyone thinks he's brilliant, and it turns out not, and turns out it's not so good after all. Which, I mean, it just overshadows the rest of the episode with the epicness of the series finale. Hounded, which was a show featuring Rufus Hound, and it was kind of about him as a journalist, but I think a journalist or something, like a presenter or something, working for the BBC, and how he had to like save the world from the evil Doctor Muhahaha. But in always a slightly different. It was kind of similar to Doctor Who in a way, but like in much more silly ways, and it was like a really sort of silly schemes to take over the world. And it was at the end, the Doctor Muhahaha, he rewinds, so he has to defeat him again in a different way. And there's lots of like running jokes throughout it, just based on the fact that the day keeps on going on, kind of like Groundhog Day. And Sam and Mark's Guide to Dodging Disaster. Now, I'm not really a huge fan of Sam and Mark, but this show is just so funny. They don't talk at all, and I didn't realise the person who does the voiceover for it is Hugh Dennis, and I think he just does a really good job of sort of explaining like what's going on. He just like talking to Sam and Mark, and they are just like responding with like sound effects and stuff. It just sort of it's kind of similar to Deadly 16 in a way, but it's just so much funnier. Just like the way of how like one of them does something stupid, and then Hugh is just like, no, not like that. Then he always like gives you like advice at the end, like if you end up in this situation, which let's face it, most of us are very unlikely to end up in, like what to do. And it's just like it's not so much informative, but it's just such a funny show. And yeah, those are all 11 shows which I feel are forgotten. After this, I think I might make another type of video, which is going to be, I'm going to look into some of the children's shows that I've previously mentioned on my other videos and this video and stuff. And I'm going to do the top 10 best episodes from them, like I did with my Doctor Who videos, and I might do the same for adult shows as well. So just maybe leave in the comments which shows you think I should do, like a top 10 list or top 10 worst list of